fasten your seatbelts and hold your questions. No, actually, send me your questions. It's time for Ask the Captain. All right, first question today is this. Why did you want to fly planes? I don't want to fly airplanes. Oh, no, I love flying airplanes. And, I fly with a lot of pilots that from the time they were 2 years old, they could think of nothing else but flying airplanes. I'm not that pilot. I was actually just looking for a job when I graduated from college. I liked airplanes. I was the kid that would go to the airport and wave at the pilots. I liked it, but I never thought about it as a career. My best friend had gone to the Naval Academy. He was getting into aviation. He and I had a conversation one day, and he said, go down to the recruiter and tell him you want to be a pilot. So I did. I went down to the Navy recruiter, walked right in. The recruiter said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a pilot. He laughed at me. He said, you and 40,000 other guys? And I said, I don't want 40,000 spots. I only want one. He put a big smile on his face. And he said, all right, I like the attitude. Let's have you take the test. I took the test. One thing led to another. And here it is 40 plus years later. And Captain Steeeve is at the other end of his career. Do I love flying? I absolutely love it. I'm going to be sorry when I don't fly anymore, but that's another story for another day. The next question is this. The sane party. What if by pure chance, 90% of the passengers happen to weigh about 320 pounds? Do you need to call out the fuel truck again? You know what? I would hate to have that happen. I wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, no pun intended. I suppose you might want to call up the dispatcher and say, we've got a problem. But you know what? It's never happened, and I don't think it ever will. But I could call dispatch and say, I think our weight and balance needs to be adjusted. We've got a lot of heavy passengers on the airplane. I'm not even sure what they would do to adjust for all of that. But could it happen? I suppose it could. It's never happened, and I'm fine with that. All right, good question. Walt 8089. Have you ever had a surprise near miss, military or airliner, while in the air? Yes, a couple of them. Now, you talk about like a midair near miss? Yes. There was a one-day war back on April 15th of 1986 when we attacked Libya back in the day. I was on active duty back then, and I was flying a P-3 Orion, and we had launched out of Sigonella, Sicily at about 5 o'clock in the morning. Back then, Muammar Gaddafi was the head of Libya, and remember the old line of death for some of you who are old enough? He had made up this line of death. And Ronald Reagan said, you know what, we're going to fly beyond that line of death, and we're going to deliver I think it was a birthday message to Gaddafi, but we dropped a bunch of bombs on him and his house and his palace and some of his airfields. And we were doing a mission that day at low level. I think we were at about 3,500 feet just off the coast of Libya. And an F-14 passed within, I want to say, feet of the front of our airplane. I don't think he even saw us. We saw him at the last minute, and he zoomed right by the front of the airplane. We flew through his wake turbulence, was quite violent. But we missed by literally feet. And at that speed, it's hard to say how close you were, but that's the nearest potential midair I've ever been involved in. And that was the military. Airliners? No, never, not at all. All right. So the next question is from JBR 496. Are check pilots a backup for the new pilot, the third pilot? Or are they just a normal captain who watches the new pilot, just two total pilots? Well, the way check pilots work is it's complicated, but if there's a two-person cockpit, let's say it's a domestic flight, just two pilots, the check pilot will sit in one of the two seats. Now, they'll sit in the other seat from the person that they're checking out. So if they're checking out a new captain, the captain always sits in the left seat. So then the check pilot will sit in the right seat. Who signs for the airplane? Who's responsible for a new pilot, new captain that's not qualified yet? The check pilot is. Until I get 25 hours of supervised flight with a check pilot, I can't sign for an airplane. Now, if it's a first officer that the check pilot is checking out, the check pilot will sit in the captain's seat. And again, the same rules apply. They sign for the airplane. Of course, the first officer can't sign for an airplane even after they do get qualified. If it's an international flight and there's three pilots and it's a check pilot just checking out all three, they will sit on the fourth. There's a second jump seat, a fourth seat in the flight deck, and they just go along for the ride and observe. Every once in a while, you hear a little click from the pen and they're writing something down. That's never good. And then when you get on the ground, they give you a full debrief on what happened. And many times sometimes they just kind of talk to you as you're going and ask you questions. So that's how check pilots work. Great question. All right. Next is Pilot Charles. Hey, Charles, what airline do you fly for? If I went into the witness protection program, Charles, I could tell you what airline I work for, but we on purpose don't mention that on this channel. It's not hard to figure it out, but I'm going to be coy with you and tell you I can't tell you for reasons that I hope are obvious, but I am not a spokesman for my airline. I don't want to be a spokesman for my airline. And if I say something that doesn't jive with them, I don't want to get them into trouble. They don't want to get me into trouble. And so we just, I love the airline I work for. It's a terrific airline. There's no problems there, but just out of respect for how the world of today operates on social media, here's good old Captain Steeeve. And I'm not going to tell you what airline I work for. All right. You'll figure it out. Right. Next is Jonathan Factor. Jonathan Factor. That's a cool name. Did you hear about all the problems at Newark Airport? Jonathan, yeah, I have. And in fact, we just got done cutting a video on that. And it's been released already. By the time you see this video, that'll already be in our catalog. Go look for it. My comments on Newark. I think we just did a CNN interview talking about the same issues at Newark. What were the basic essential issues there? There's a crumbling infrastructure of old computers that they should have been updated 30 years ago. They certainly need to be updated today. We need to get away from talking on the radio so much. And again, air traffic controllers are in short supply. It's a highly stressful job. We need to train more air traffic controllers, and we need to keep more of them around. They can retire at age 56. Did you know that? Age 56. There needs to be some incentives in place to keep some of those experienced controllers around for a little bit longer while we resupply people coming in the front door. But that's essentially what happened at Newark. But fortunately, nobody was hurt. All right, next is BDB 3350. Can you fly across an airport without intention of landing or emergency? And what are the rules? Okay, that's a great question, actually. Could I actually overfly an airport? Yeah, I could. And in my civilian airplane, I do sometimes. Now, there's different airspace over different airports. The one that is the most common that you hear a lot on this channel and others is Class B airspace. Class B airspace goes from the surface all the way up to 10,000 feet, and it looks like an upside down wedding cake. It's small around the runway, and then it kind of expands as it goes up to 10,000 feet. If I can fly over 10,000 feet, I don't have to worry about talking to anybody. If I can fly around the parameters of Class B airspace, nobody's problem. Your question was, can I fly right over the airport? Yeah, I just have to ask for VFR flight following, and then I have to request permission to transit Class B airspace. If there's nobody in the way, no problem. Could I fly over the airport at 5,500 feet? Many times I have. They just basically say you are cleared to transit Class B airspace at 5,500 feet. Great. And then they follow me on the radar. That's a really, really good question. All right. The next one is from Mike Arbon. Mike writes this: when you talk about a checklist, what is actually written on a checklist? Well, a checklist is just exactly what it says. It's a whole bunch of items that have a little checkbox next to them. So I could, I guess back in the old days with a grease pen, physically check them off. All of mine on the 777 are now on a screen, and I just click them off and they turn from white to green. But it's all the things I need to do to get my jet ready to go flying so I don't forget something, or I don't have to commit it to memory, or I don't have to have it written down on a piece of paper and lose that piece of paper. It's all right there. It's not a do list. I can do all the things ahead of time, and then I can check them with my checklist. Sometimes people think of them as a do list, like I can't do the next thing until I get to that item. Nope. I can usually do it ahead of time. Then I go back and I just double check my homework before I hand it in and we take off. That's the way to look at it, right? Great question. All right, the next is from Steve Diaz. Have you ever accidentally made your PA announcement to your passengers over the ATC frequency? Not yet. I haven't. All right. Now, have I keyed the mic sometimes to make a transmission out of the airplane and I didn't have the mic switch selected properly? Yes, I've done that several times. And you call and nobody answers you. And you're like, huh. And you call again and nobody answers you. And then you look down and you go, oh, I forgot to push the button. Push the button. When it says mic on it, then it's transmitting outside the airplane. But fingers crossed, old Captain Steeeve hasn't made a PA that he regrets yet. Okay, could happen. Next is Desert Dave. There's a point after touchdown when the aircraft slows dramatically, but the engines rev up. What's the cat hair is going on there? All right. what the cat hair is going on there? I've never heard that expression, but all right. There's a moment where after you touch down, the weight comes on the wheels, the spoilers on the wings deploy, the airplane now, the full weight of the airplane comes down, and I'm pulling it into reverse. When I first pull it into reverse, you get the most effectiveness out of the reversers. As I slow down, you get less and less and less reverse. And basically what happens, especially on my airplane, the 777, it's the back of the engine slides back, and the forced air in reverse comes out the side, creating kind of like a wall of air. There are some older airplanes, Super 80s, DC-9s, where they had a mechanism that came around the back of the jet engine, and it would force the thrust out of the back this way. Those are much more effective reversers. You could even back up an airplane using one of those. But that's what you see. That first little blast of air coming out is the most effective the reversers get. Next question. Terrasat writes this. Are you aware when a person in police custody is being transported on your airplane? Yes, absolutely. I have to be informed as the captain that there's a prisoner on board the airplane. They have to be escorted onto the airplane, and they have to stay with that prisoner. They have to be in handcuffs while they're on the airplane. Can they go to the bathroom? Yes, but they're escorted to the bathroom and back, and they're always in handcuffs and with a police escort, and I have to know about it. Good question. All right. Next is this. George Canfield, 1779. That's not your birthday, is it? No, it couldn't be. All right. Have you ever been scared? Yeah, George, a couple of times in the airplane. Not so much at the airlines, but with the military. I think I said on a previous video, there was a time where we landed in a real bad rainstorm and the airplane hydroplaned. We almost went off the end of the runway. The brakes weren't taking because we were skidding along on the kind of a film of water. We finally came to a stop at the very end of the runway, and I had like 1 foot of runway remaining, and my knees were knocking really bad. Another time in the military as well, I was flying a student in the airplane. We had a malfunction right after rotate. The rudder got stuck all the way out. The airplane started into an uncontrollable bank. I was able to get control of the airplane. We got only up to about 200 feet. We came back for a full stop landing. I slammed on the brakes, and my knees were knocking so bad I couldn't stand up and get out of the airplane. It took about 10 minutes for the adrenaline rush to go down. So those are the two that they come to mind. That's a really good question. All right. Olmi Nguyen writes this. If your name is Jack, can you still be a pilot? I don't even know how to answer that question. Yeah, of course you can. Sure, why not? Jack, the pilot. Black 10 is the next question. If the pilot on a commercial flight were to eat the fish and become disabled, could you actually be called upon to assist? All right. Again, I got a whole cadre of friends that have watched Airplane from 1980, where they drug all three pilots down the center row of the airplane because they had all eaten the fish. I, by the way, don't eat the fish. A, I'm not a big fish fan, but B, I watched that movie too, like you, and just out of an abundance of caution, I don't eat the fish. If I was in the back of the airplane, could I be called up to help assist or actually land the airplane if all the pilots were incapacitated? I would hope so. I hope somebody would grab me and say, hey, by the way, all the pilots are incapacitated. Can you land this airplane? I'm going to give it my best try. There's a lot of commonality in commercial jets. Do I think I could get a different type of airplane on the ground safely? I'd like to give it a try. I would, I think. I think it would have a good outcome. Better than just a passenger trying to do that same thing. Right. Next is Gerardo Hernandez. I've heard many times from pilots that you don't call your first officer co-pilot. Is that not respectful anymore or true? So the expression co-pilot is kind of a construct of Hollywood movie making, pilot to co-pilot. Way back in the days, they were called co-pilots because the co-pilot wasn't actually trained at the same level as the pilot. The pilot was always the captain, and the pilot had all the qualifications, and only the pilot flew the airplane. The co-pilot was there as like a administrative assistant. That was way, way back in the early days of flying. Now, the pilot and the first officer, or pilot and co-pilot, if you want to call it that, it's not a matter of disrespect. We're both equally qualified on the airplane. Now, I signed for the airplane. I'm the last say on what happens, but we're both equally qualified. Both type rated in the airplane. That way, if something happens to me, you don't have a lesser or inferior quality pilot trying to land the airplane. They are every bit as qualified as your captain is. But captain, first officer is the lingo now. Is it an insult to call him a co-pilot? If it harkens back to the old days when they weren't really qualified and real pilots, yeah, a little bit, it would be. That's a good question, right? Master Bonbon writes this. Bathroom break during flight? Question mark. Yes. Captain Steeeve is an old man, and Captain Steeeve is a human like everybody else. And when I fly an 8-hour flight, there ain't no way I'm holding it for that long. And I need to get up and stretch my legs and get some blood flowing. I don't want that deep vein thrombosis from sitting too long. So I'll get up, I'll stretch my legs, I'll take a bathroom break, I'll get a sip of coffee, all those things. Do I do it numerous times during the flight? Yeah, I do. It's good. It's healthy for you to do that. But that's a great question. All right. Then the final question today is from 3G or 73. Would you have liked to have flown the Concorde if you had a chance? And what is your favorite World War II aircraft? Oh, absolutely. I would have given my eye teeth, as they say, to fly the Concorde. The cool thing is supersonic travel is coming back. Several airlines, mine included, have put down options on what's called the boom aircraft. Kind of a sketchy name, but anyway, boom aircraft, right? And they're going to be the future of aviation, at least supersonic aviation. And I wish I was not timing out. I wish I could hang around long enough to do that. But yeah, that's such a cool airplane and such cool technology. My favorite World War II airplane is a toss-up between an A4 Corsair and a P-51 Mustang. I just think the Corsair looks really cool. It's a cool looking airplane. It's actually much bigger than you think. When you see one in person, you go, wow, it's a big airplane. The P-51, on the other hand, the Mustang, is much smaller than you expect it to be. But both of those things were real hot rods, and I wish I could have flown either one of those. Okay, my friends, that does it for today. Great questions. Great questions today. Keep those questions coming. We'll keep looking for them. And if you make the cut in the comments, we might put your question on the next Ask the Captain. Now you know. I'm Captain Steeeve. Fly safe.